Hey guys, Jared here, and today we're going to compare the Intel Skylake 6700K CPU against the newer Kabylake 7700K. While both of these are desktop CPUs, I'll be running benchmarks on both of them within two different laptops to see how they perform. We'll then discuss the differences between them to help you find out which you should get in your laptop. First, let's note the similarities between these two chips. Both have 4 CPU cores with 8 threads, are based on a 14nm manufacturing process. They also have the same 91W TDP with 8MB of cache available, and both CPUs support up to 64GB of RAM with 2 memory channels, and provide 16 PCI Express lanes. That's where the majority of important similarities ends. So how do they differ? The main difference is that the older 6700K is clocked slightly lower at 4.0 GHz and can turbo up to 4.2 GHz. While the newer 7700K is clocked at 4.2 GHz and can turbo up to 4.5 GHz. It also overclocks slightly better. How much of a performance difference does this make practically? To test this, I've run some CPU-specific benchmarks on the two different laptops with these processors to find out. Both laptops are running Windows 10 with all available updates installed on an SSD, and have 16GB of DDR4 memory available. The laptop with the 6700K is running the memory at 2133 MHz, while the 7700K's memory is running at 2400 MHz. Apart from this small difference, the graphics cards are also different. But that shouldn't matter as we're not comparing any games here. So the other main difference is of course the CPUs, which is what we're testing here. So hopefully you can see the laptops are mostly similar. In Cinebench, the CPU score for the 6700K was 836, while the 7700K received 894, so a little improvement, but an improvement nonetheless. In the Passmark CPU benchmark, the 6700K received a CPU score of 11,108. Interestingly, the 7700K received a score of 10,667, which is actually slightly lower. I ran this test a few times and got similar results. The newer Kabylake CPU came behind the older Skylake CPU in terms of overall score on this test consistently. In my 6700HQ vs 7700HQ CPU video, we actually had the same result, where the Skylake CPU beat Kabylake, so I'm not too sure if what's being tested in this test is actually better on the older chip, or more likely the particular benchmark hasn't properly been optimized for Kabylake chips. Despite this, if we actually look at the number for the individual tests, in most cases the 7700K is actually slightly ahead. So it could also be that this particular benchmark generates the final score in a strange manner. In Geekbench 4, the 6700K got 5081 for single core, and 16,177 for multi-core. The 7700K got 5,265 for the single core score, and 16,347 for the multi-core score. This was another interesting test. Although the single-core performance on the 7700K is higher as expected, the multi-core performance result was much closer. Again, this depends greatly on what the test actually does behind the scenes. However, I found it interesting that the results seem to favor single-core performance over multi-core. The 7-zip benchmark was also very close. I ran it for 10 passes with a dictionary size of 32 MB. The 6700K got a total rating of 24,548 MIPS, while the 7700K got a total rating of 25,044 MIPS. So the 7700K was only slightly faster at compression tasks here. I then used Handbrake to encode a 500MB MP4 video file that I recorded from 1080p to 720p. The 6700K completed the job at an average speed of 43.7 frames per second, while the 7700K completed encoding the same file at 45.3 frames per second. So the 7700K was only slightly faster in the encoding test. I didn't test temperatures here as the cooling solutions between both laptops were actually quite different, so I didn't feel comfortable comparing the two as I didn't feel that it was very fair. In general, however, the Kabylake CPU was slightly warmer as expected based on its higher clock speeds. Assuming that your particular laptop could keep your temperatures in check, then you could also attempt to perform overclocking. However, as this would increase power draw and heat, it doesn't really seem as appealing in the laptop form factor when compared against overclocking in the desktop CPU. And if you saw my recent 7700HQ vs 7700K video where I did do overclocking, I got less than a 4% performance increase throughout all these tests, which I think is hardly worth it in a laptop anyway. So based on all these tests, the 7700K appears to only be a very small incremental upgrade. On average, with all of these tests combined, the 7700K performed approximately 2.1% better on stock clock speeds when compared against the 6700K. Kind of pathetic. I figured that this would be the case after watching a bunch of 6700K and 7700K benchmark reviews previously when Kabylake was released. However, I wanted to test these CPUs in a laptop rather than desktop to get an idea of laptop performance and find out if they're possibly worth considering over other chips such as the HQ series. Overall, I found the results a bit disappointing. as the 6700K was released in Q3 of 2015, while the 7700K came out in Q1 of 2017, so despite being quite a lot newer, it's not actually that much better. Hopefully the recent release of Ryzen CPUs starts to change this trend in weak performance increases that we've seen from Intel recently. I didn't notice any practical difference between using the two laptops with either of these CPUs day to day, so if you're looking at a new laptop, the 6700K is definitely still fine, as the newer version only offers extremely small performance improvements, at least in the workloads demonstrated here. By all means, if your new laptop has a 7700K CPU and you can afford it, then go for it. But if you're looking at one that has a 6700K, then it's definitely still a good competitor, and might be cheaper now due to it being considered last generation. If the prices are pretty similar, then I'd suggest going for the newer 7700K, otherwise you'll need to determine if the extra cost is worth it based on the small performance increases that we've measured in our tests here. If you're already running a 6700K, there's basically no incentive to upgrade to the next generation, unless you need to buy a new laptop anyway for other reasons, or require Kabylake specific features such as 4K decoding at the hardware level. Unless something drastically changes within the CPU area in the near future, you probably won't need to upgrade your laptop in terms of CPU power for quite some time with either of these CPUs. I hope this video has helped you see the real-world differences in performance between these two CPUs. Be sure to leave a comment on the video and let me know which of these CPUs you'd pick, and leave a like on the video if you found it useful. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for future tech videos like this one.